Hello kids, I'm Dr. Seuss, author of some books you're probably familiar with, like Oh, the Things You Can Think, and Dr. Seuss's ABCs, and Fox in Socks. And you can probably tell by the hat I'm wearing, I also wrote another famous book called The Cat in the Hat. Well, first of all, I'm going to tell you about myself today, and about some of my work. And then, we're going to read a story about your very own school. But wait, there's more. First of all, my name isn't even Seuss. No, it's not. I had a friend named Alex, and he wrote a little poem which I'll tell you to help you remember how really to pronounce my name. It goes like this. You're wrong as the deuce, and you shouldn't rejoice. If you're calling him Seuss, he pronounces it Seuss. Actually, my name is Theodor Seuss Geisel. Now that's a big mouthful. It sounds so strange because my parents were from Germany in the Bavaria region. That's right. And guess what? My birthday is coming up on March 2nd. I was born in 1904 in Springfield, Massachusetts. I wrote 46 books under 3 different names. One was Dr. Seuss. A few of them were Theo the Sig, which is Geisel spelled backwards with Theo in front of it. And one was under the oddball name Rosetta Stone. But you can call me Ted. My friends and family do. Do you like to color and draw? I do too. And I've been doing that since I was a little kid. I grew up wanting to be an artist. And when I was done with high school, I went on to college. And I learned how to be an artist there. And it was there, publishing one of their magazines, when I first started to use Dr. Seuss as my title. Actually, I started using Dr. Theophrastus Seuss, but nobody knew how to spell Theophrastus, so I just cut it back to Seuss. Now, after I got out of college, it was very hard to get a job. That was around 1927, and in those times, jobs were hard to come by. So, I went to New York City and I was looking for a job. I finally found one, and it was doing advertisements of all things for a company called Standard Oil. Now, this may sound boring, but that's where I got my start. Actually, I did a campaign for insecticide, you know, bug spray, and I came up with a catchphrase that goes like this. Quick, Henry, get the FLIT! Because FLIT was the kind of bug spray that I was writing for and doing the advertisements and drawing the pictures. Now, quick, Henry, get the FLIT became a household phrase, kind of like got milk was a few years ago here. So suddenly I was super famous and I could get a job anywhere I wanted. I worked not only for Standard Oil, I also did advertisement for NBC and General Electric and Ford Motor Company. So I had great work, but I always wanted to be my own artist, doing my work and doing stories too. Oh. When you work for a large corporation, sometimes you have to sign a large contract, which I had to do. Now, that contract said I could not work for anybody else except for those people, unless I wrote one particular type of book which they cared nothing about, and that was books for children. And I loved it! I always wanted to write books for children anyway, so that's what I did. So in 1931, I wrote a book for kids, and I took it to New York City, and I tried to get it published. And guess what? No one would read my book. I was crushed, and for 6 years, I kept trying to get the book published, but no one would read it. So you know what I did? I threw that book away, and I wrote another one. And I took this new book to New York City and tried to get it published too. Well, guess what? No one wanted to read that one either. So I tried and tried. In fact, I went to 26 different people, and none of the publishing companies wanted to read my book. So I was so dejected that I was walking down the street and I decided I'm gonna throw this book away, when I look and see my friend walking in the opposite direction. Turns out he just got a job with one of these big companies as an editor. And he told me, Ted, come on upstairs, I'll read your book. And he did. And guess what? He loved it and published it. And that's not all. And soon, that very first book, which is And to Think That I Saw It on Mulberry Street, sold many copies, and I was in. By the way, I named it, I think I saw it on Mulberry Street, because I grew up on Mulberry Street. But along came World War II, and I quit doing advertisements and became a different type of artist. I became a political cartoonist. Now, political cartoonist sounds like a great big title, but really what you do is you draw pictures, silly pictures, and they put them in newspapers. Now, the pictures you get to draw make fun of people, so it's a lot of fun to do. And in World War II, we had lots of enemies to make fun of. But wait, there's more. Now, after the war was over, I went back to writing children's books. Almost every book I wrote was in verse. Do you know what that means? That means the words rhyme together. Rhyming's where it's at. Here's an example. Hop on pop. Let me just read a page or two. Here we go. The very beginning. Up, pup. Pup is up. Cup, pup. Pup in cup. Then it gets more complicated. Pup, cup. Cup on pup. See? But everything rhymes here. These words rhyme. So I've had lots of fun writing books that rhyme. People sometimes ask me, why do you write books that rhyme? Well, the best I can figure is this. My mom worked in my grandfather's bakery. He made all kinds of things, but one of the things he loved to bake the most was pies. So my mom would sell the pies. And when she would come home at night and tuck me into bed, instead of singing me stories, she would just recite verses about pies. All kinds of pies, like coconut and peach and cherry and apricot and lemon and boysenberry. And these would rhyme. And I would go to sleep listening to those pies rhyme in my head. So I guess it stuck. Speaking of questions I get asked, here's another one. People always ask me, where do you get your ideas, Dr. Seuss? We love your books. Now, a lot of authors will not share where they get their ideas with you. You know why? They're afraid that somebody will come along and steal their ideas and then write the books before they do. But I'm not afraid, and I'll tell you exactly where I get my ideas from. You want to know? Switzerland! That's right, Switzerland. In Switzerland, way up in the mountains, they're called the Alps. Up really high is a village called Glech. It's near the Farco Pass. And above Glech, about 2,000 feet more, is another village called Uberglech. And Uberglech has the world's greatest cuckoo clock repairman. So every August on the 4th, I take my cuckoo clock there to him so he can repair it. And while my cuckoo clock is in the hospital getting repaired, I go down to the streets and talk to the people who are very strange, but they have great ideas, which I write down. So I recommend to you to go to Uberglech once a year and get your own great ideas. Now, here's my most famous book in the world, The Cat in the Hat. Hence the hat. It's called A Cat in the Hat. Now, why did I write this book? Well, I'll tell you. I was writing a lot of books. And then one day the phone rang, and it was a man from a big publishing company, and he said, Dr. Seuss, would you please write a book that is not boring for our kids in school so they will actually read it? I said, of course, because at that time, most of the books in school were very boring. Then he said, there's a catch. Dr. Seuss, we want this book to contain a bunch of words. You must read over these words and choose 225 of them and use them in your book. 225 words? Certain words? Well, I took it as a challenge. I read their list of words and I wrote Cat in the Hat. And it was immediately successful. It took off, and in the first year alone, this book sold over 1 million copies. That's right, but you want to know a little secret? I didn't use 225 words. I used 236, and they never found out. But read Cat in the Hat, and you can count them all yourself. Okay, here's another book I like. It's called Fox in Socks, and it rhymes too, but the rhymes are tricky and complicated. Here, I'll read a little bit for you. Fox, socks, box, knocks. Well, that's not very complicated, is it? But just wait. Knocks in box, and fox in socks. Knocks on fox, in socks, in box. See? Okay, a little bit more. Socks on knocks, and knocks in box. Fox in socks, on box, on knocks. Now let me skip ahead to the end because it gets really crazy. If you've never read this book, this is my favorite part. See, Mr. Knox can't handle it, so he's trying to get Mr. Fox to stop it. He says, stop it, that's enough, sir. I can't read such silly stuff, sir. Very well then, Mr. Knox, sir. Let's have a little talk about Tweedlebeetles. Do you know about Tweedlebeetles? Well, when Tweedlebeetles fight, it's called a Tweedlebeetle battle. And when they battle in a puddle, it's a Tweedlebeetle puddle battle. And when Tweedlebeetles battle with puddles in a muddle, they put... I can't even read it myself. So you should try. And better yet, get your parents to read this one. And just watch their tongues get twisted in a knot. It's a lot of fun. Now, speaking of stories, I wrote one about your school. Do you want to hear it? Okay, here we go. It's called Faces at Oasis. Now, I didn't have time to draw the pictures yet, so you'll just have to use your imagination. But that won't be very hard because everything in here you already know about, especially some of the characters. Here we go. The day was quite hot and nowhere was cool inside most of the buildings of Oasis School. Out all of the vents in all of the classes blew only hot air on the lads and the lasses. Mr. Hook mopped his head, all soggy with goo, and moaned to himself, "It's 102! It can't get much hotter, surely it can't!" But it did, and that poor old principal started to pant. And he sweat as he moaned in that terrible heat. "Why, it's hot from my head right down to my feet!" And the kids in the school, although they're soft-spoken, began to complain. The air conditioner must be broken. "The students are mad," said Mr. Hook in a panic. "Mr. Brown, get the ladder," he said, kind of frantic. And they raced up the ladder to the top of the roof, and there saw a crime. They saw the crime proof. "Someone has been up here," Hook said in the sun. "Someone has been up here, and just look what they've done." Mr. Brown looked around, and he saw it as well. Every last air conditioner had been taken, and that's just when he fell. Off the roof, Brown did tumble, fell smack on the ground. Hook raced down beside him. Brown looked up with a frown. "I slipped," said Mr. Brown, "on a patch slick and wet." "I'm sorry," said Hook. "You slipped on my sweat." But the ground around Brown was all wet under him, and the puddle it came from flowed out of the gym. "This water is cold," said Hook with a grin, "and it comes from the gym. Quick, let's go and look in." At the door of the gym, Mr. Brown turned his key twice. Inside was quite frosty, the floor covered with ice. And out on that ice, fresh back from Samoa, a woman was skating. "Why, it's Mrs. Gamboa!" "Hi there, you two," she said with great style. "This is how they cool down on that tropical isle." And she skated a circle as the cold air blew, and she slid to a stop in front of those two. "Miss Gamboa," Hook yelled, "what did you do?" He began to change colors. He started to stew. "I brought the cold air from up there down to here. The children will love it. They'll laugh. They will cheer." The children will love it? That's what she had said. Well, if the children will love it, Hook simply couldn't turn red. "What a splendid idea!" Hook cried to Gamboa. "What great things you learned on your trip to Samoa." And he called all the students on his thingamaspeakers, and they ran to the gym and took off their sneakers. And all that hot day, all the kids from Oasis had fun on the ice with smiles on their faces. So remember, March 2nd is my birthday. Celebrate with much joy and lots of cake. I would. Now get out there and read a book. It can be by Dr. Seuss or any author that you like. And remember this as you go through life. We can do better than this. We've got to. Goodbye now. Goodbye. 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 Goodbye.